Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today we're going to take a look at Zorin OS. Zorin OS 16 is an Ubuntu-based distro that I really haven't ever taken a look at. So I'm really kind of curious to see how this is going to go. And thanks to ALH for bringing this to my attention. I've heard of Zorin OS many times, but never really took a look at it. Like I said, Ubuntu-based. So it's got to be put on a very solid base. And as I understand it, there's 3 different versions too. But first, Matt Lawson says, one problem I have had consistently with Arch-based distros, and I'm on Manjaro, is yarn, npm, npx gets broken often. I have no idea why it gets broken. And you mentioned MX Linux being stable. I wonder if this would happen less on MX Linux. I love Arch and am scared of Debian because it's hard to configure without the ability to micromanage packages like we can do in Arch. And you know, that's a great point. When I read this, it did kind of strike a chord with me because I'm kind of in the same boat. I really love Arch and I'm really big on using Arch, and that's why I have it on some of my computers here in the house. In fact, my son also uses Arch on one of his laptops. I have Arch on my secondary computer, and then I'm running MX on this one. And again, it's really just kind of comes down for my personal situation being stability. I find that Debian just kind of works out overall better for me if I need something that's absolutely 100% stable and maybe I don't really care about having the latest kernel. In this situation where I'm recording, I just have a lot less problems when I'm running something Debian based, and MX just kind of gives me everything I need right out of the box with minimal work to have to configure and collect libraries and so forth. So I prefer just having a quick solution that I can set up for a work computer. Besides that, having Debian and Arch both keeps me up to speed on both platforms. So that also is a little bit of a factor with me too, is because I don't want to get behind on one or the other either. So with Arch, I love the AUR and having access to everything that's the latest and greatest, and I don't have to compensate with Flatpaks and snaps and so forth. And so I'm always on the cutting edge. But with cutting edge, there's always a little bit of a trade-off, and typically that trade-off is lots and lots of updates. You get updates all the time, every day, sometimes a few times a day. Matt's using Manjaro, so that's cutting back on his updates a little bit because they do hold back a little. So it's a little bit more mellowed out in Matt's choice. But what I say, Matt, is just give it a try. Whether you want to try it on a VM first and then go to real hardware, there is a difference too. Sometimes something might work great on VM but doesn't work well on hardware. So the real test is hardware, of course. If you got something you can install it on that is disposable, so to speak. You might want to try it on a laptop or something first, but I say just give it a go and see how it works out for you. That's what I love about the Linux kernel. You can run Linux with any desktop you want, a desktop environment, a Windows managers, or no window manager or desktop at all. You can just run headless if you're setting up a server or whatever your situation. So you just have an endless array of choices with the Linux kernel. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why you see so many reviews where people really don't stick to one thing as being the best, because that's a pretty common question. What is the best? What's the best distro? Is it Arch? Is it Debian? Is it XFCE, KDE, Gnome? What's the best? And the reality is, there really is no best. As far as a universal sense goes, it's only best for you. Everybody's situation is different. Everyone's hardware is different. There are so many different variables. And taste is also included, personal taste. So it really is up to the individual. So if you know ahead of time what you like, installing a prepackaged desktop environment can get you in the ballpark of where you want to be. If you want to have something that looks like a Windows machine or a Mac machine, or none of the above. You got all kinds of choices. So there you go. Enough of my rambling. Let's move onward and upward. So here I am out at the Zorin OS website. Zorin OS is really an interesting looking distro to me. Here I'm at the Zorin OS homepage, and really nice looking website right off the bat. Here we got a little bit of an overview of what we have. They start out with going off with a lot of different types of releases. It looks like they have here like Zorin Grid, which is something new, I think, where you can manage OS-powered, Zorin OS-powered computers in your business, school, or organization. So that is really nice if you're deploying Zorin OS in like a lab environment or some type of commercial environment where you have multiple computers all running the same OS. So that's really cool. And then down at their main page, because I wasn't on their main page, I must have been in Zorin Grid. So anyway, here what they want to do, it looks like, is they want to strive to give you a familiar desktop that you already know how to use. So I think they're catering to like Windows users and Mac users and so forth, and maybe even Ubuntu users. So here they got a lot of different layouts here. Also can run on older PCs, which is great. Zorin Lite is one of the editions that they offer, and there's actually 3 editions, at least that I know of, for Zorin OS. That would be Zorin Lite, Zorin Core, and Zorin Pro. The differences being the Zorin Lite is based on XFCE, and it uses a little bit less resources, I think, maybe than the Pro version. The Pro version is based on Gnome, the Gnome shell, and it says that it's streamlined to work on computers as old as 15 years. Nice. With an Ubuntu and Linux foundation, Zorin OS is built on the same open source software that powers the U.S. Department of Defense and computers on the International Space Station. Wow. And they have a very strict policy on privacy, on protecting your privacy, so that's a good thing. I like to see that. As Zorin OS is open source, of course, so anyone can audit its source code and verify its security. And then a ton of apps available, and it also shows that it is streamlined for gaming. Nice. So that is really cool too. And then it shows here where you can use Steam, Lutris, the software store, and so on. And then of course Zorin Connect to hook up your Android phone, 100 languages. They make it easy to install alongside Windows or Mac OS. Always nice to use. So you can choose your OS right at boot up. And then Office Suite's available, which is by default LibreOffice. And I think OnlyOffice is another option as well. Another thing I think is really cool here is that they have an option here for schools. And this is Zorin OS 15.3 Education. I really like that. That is really nice to see. I think a lot of schools could really benefit from something like this. I think if you're an IT director in a school, or somebody that works in a lab, or whoever, somebody that's an administrator in a school could really turn this into a game changer, especially if you're in a school that's on a tight budget. Or you just have problems with refreshing computers every couple of years, where you have to go and budget and beg to the school board for more computers to fill up the classrooms and the labs and so forth. And then you're constantly fighting with spyware on Windows and so forth. Maybe you don't have a thin client solution, so you're constantly at battle with spyware and printer problems and everything else. This is a great way to eliminate all of that by bringing Linux into it. Plus, you're getting rid of your license fees and server CALs and all kinds of other things from Microsoft that you can shave right off of your budget. And you can reuse your old computers with Zorin OS, and suddenly those slow, sluggish computers that have gone to a crawl in Windows are now fast and young again. In fact, they'll probably run faster than they did when they were brand new with Windows. So yes, this is really nice. And then here they show a classroom control module that's also available, so the teacher can actually monitor all the computers in the classroom, and if a student has an issue, of some sort and they can't figure something out, the teacher and the student can actually screen share each other's screen so they can be helped more efficiently. I think that's really great. So this is just a really wonderful thing here. I just had to give that a mention because I think more schools should consider some type of solution along these lines. So if you happen to be an educator or an IT guy in a school, take this under consideration. It might be a game changer. All right, so I'm gonna run over here to the download page now. And here we have our 3 different versions. Zorin OS Pro is the one that gives you all kinds of extra apps available by default, more productivity software. It's got the Pro Lite edition for old PCs. So you can also get the Pro in the Lite version, it looks like. And it also supports the development of Zorin OS. And it's only $39. So that's a real deal there. It's hard to go wrong for $39. Also, you get a bigger choice of layouts. I think you get maybe 4 in the Lite version, whereas in the Pro version, you get even more layouts, and some of the layouts are customized. I think you get a Windows 11 type layout, a Mac OS type layout. So you get some extra layouts that you can choose from too, which is really cool. And then of course the free versions are the Core and the Lite. The Core is for use on modern computers, and then the Lite version is for the older computers up to 15 years old, and you could probably even go beyond that if you wanted to stretch it. We're going to go with the Core download, and then here you got a comparison of the OS editions. So you might want to check that out too if you're kind of on the fence there of where to go. And of course the LibreOffice comes with all 3. You get your advanced desktop in the Pro and Core. So we still have an advanced here in the Core version. You got your standard desktop layouts. And then of course the Pro has all these extras like the premium desktop layouts for Mac OS, Windows 11 Classic and Ubuntu. Wow. Professional grade creative suite apps, productivity software, additional artwork, and installation support. So I think I'm going to go with the Zorin OS Core. So I'm going to go ahead and download that, and after that I'm going to jump right into the live version and we'll see how it looks. Okay, I'm in the Virtualbox Settings right now, real quick, because I just wanted to show you over here in the display settings. Typically in here I want to go with VBox SVGA as opposed to VM SVGA. That way I get my choices of 1920 by 1080 for the resolution. For some reason, at least that's true on this computer, no matter what distro I'm running, I always have to use VBox SVGA for certain ISOs. And of course you'll get a complaint down here that says that's invalid settings, but that's what works for me. And if I was running Cinnamon or KDE, I'd probably want to even enable the 3D acceleration. In this case, the 3D acceleration would probably give me worse results. But there are some cases where you want to enable that as well. So just thought I'd just pass that along as a quick tip, what works for me. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and boot in. Okay, here we are at our menu. So I'm going to just hit try or install, and we'll boot right in. And I'm going to hit Control-C here to bypass this checking. That's mildly irritating. I think that's pretty common on most Ubuntu-based distros, and Ubuntu itself, of course. And I typically just Control-C past that because for me it's just an annoyance. And if you don't hit Control-C right away, you're stuck for the duration. Okay. Okay, so now we got a menu here with a loud intro sound. So I'm going to go with Try Zorin. You can install it right from here if you want to just jump right into the installer. I'm just going to take a quick look at the environment here in the live area. And here we are in the live desktop. So really nice looking right off the bat. And here's our XFCE environment. And this is our menu here. Beautiful. It looks really great. Then down here we got our taskbar settings, system monitor, and so forth. So let's jump right in and do an install. I'm going to open this installer here. Loud intro sound again. Okay, so here's our installer. It kind of looks like the Ubiquiti installer, I believe. Gonna hit continue, and that's good for our default layout, so we'll go with English. These defaults I think I'll just go with as well. You got download updates while installing Zorin OS, install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi, so definitely want to have the third-party in there. And then if you don't want to participate in the census, you can check this box. However, I'm good with that. All they're doing is just counting how many people are using it. So that's good with me. And downloading updates while installing Zorin, that'll make the install longer. So yeah, that's a tough call there. I mean, I could just leave it checked, I suppose, and take the longer download. And then I'll just hit continue. And I'm going to select erase disk and install Zorin OS. And then yes to confirm. Or continue. The pre-selected time zone is good, so I'm going to continue there. And then I'll just type in my username info. Okay, rebooting now. And if everything went okay, we should have a login screen coming up. And here we are. Excellent. So I'm going to click and log in. And there we go. We got a nice background there and our environment, which looks like the Gnome desktop classic. Probably like Gnome 3 something. But definitely the Gnome shell. And looks really nice right from the start. There's our software center files. Browser, and here's our menu, which looks really nice too. And so we got our accessories and over here on and other applications. So under accessories, looks like we got a few basic apps and a weather app, which is nice. Very cool. Google Maps. And I noticed it's got a back button there. That seems kind of unnecessary to me to have to do an extra click to get out of a category, but oh well. And then we got our places here, and then software settings and appearance settings. Very cool. And then over on this side, just gonna slide up out of the way real quick. We got our settings here to our system settings, a link. And then we got our lock and our power off logout settings. So all our different stuff here, suspend and so forth. And then we got our calendar, and I'm in the way again. So I'm going to jump up even higher. Okay, we can select a weather location, our notifications. Really nice calendar there. I always like that. And then here's our taskbar settings. And if we go in here, by default, we're set at about 48 pixels, which is pretty tall. So you can back it off a bit there and have it around 32. That's kind of a nice, comfortable spot for me. However, I'm going to go with the default here just for the sake of continuity. And then you can override your opacity here so you can make it more transparent or more opaque. So you can adjust it to your taste right there. And this kind of gives you a little bit more flexibility. Here your position, you can change your panel position. So you can put it up on top or slide it over on your left hand side, kind of almost like a Unity style or a Gnome classic. And then right, and then of course the bottom, which is kind of my preferred spot there, is just with the default. And then here you can adjust these different areas and your applications button and all this. So you get a little bit of flexibility over your layout, even though in the free version, you're a little bit more limited to your layouts. However, this kind of gives you a little more flexibility. And then your behavior here, so you can set your behavior to show running applications. And here's your preview on hover. That's something I always like, is a preview on hover. And that's what that is. And if you want to change it, you can come up here and hit your settings, and then you can middle click on the preview to close it, and also to change the size of it too. And then that is having it off. And then you can ungroup applications if you don't want them grouped together, which they're grouped by default. And then here, you got action. So back in our style, so that was that. Nice. And then if we click on our menu again, let's take a look at some of our apps. So if we come up here and under utilities, I want to open up the terminal real quick. I want to just kind of install HTOP and Neofetch just to get a little bit more info. So we're going to do a sudo apt install HTOP Neofetch. So we're going to install both of those. And I'm going to hit yes to that. And then this way we can kind of take a look at our resources and our kernel and all that cool stuff. And this is just a slightly more graphical way to do it. So here's HTOP, and it looks like we're running 827 megs. That's not too bad, actually, especially in a Gnome. I guess it's kind of what you would expect, actually. And CPU usage looked pretty reasonable there. So now if we go Neofetch, we can see our kernel is 5.11.8-66 generic. And we're running the Gnome shell here with the Mutter window manager and Zorin Light theme. So looking good here. And then the Gnome terminal for our terminal emulator. That's looking good. And also it's also echoing the 813 megs, which is pretty reasonable, I think. And here we can select our appearance settings. So this is what we get here in the free version by default. So we got about 4 choices here to choose from, which is pretty nice. This is what we're in right now as the first selection. And if we click this, it's the same, I think, except you get your text next to your icons there down in the taskbar. This looks about the same, maybe a little smaller. I can't really tell. I think slightly smaller. And then if we click on this guy, everything's centered over here, our icons. So that's kind of nice, almost a Windows 11-ish style. And then we got a full screen menu in here, which I like. So this is nice. Of the layouts I've seen so far, this is probably my favorite. I kind of like that full screen layout. And then here's our somewhat Unity style here. It's showing a bar here on the side, but we go up here to activities and click it, and then it opens up just like your kind of Gnome style. You click the activities to expose this, and then our classic Gnome menu. So this is more kind of like the traditional, almost traditional. I shouldn't say totally traditional, but if you go back a little bit on the Gnome, that's kind of where Gnome 338 was, I think. So nice. And then these are other ones you can get if you update to Pro. So you got the Unity look and the Windows 11 look, Mac look, and so forth. So that's cool. So I'm going to switch that back to its original just to keep consistent. And then I'm going to open up our file manager so we can kind of see our changes here, because I'm in my theme now. And so if I go and change it to green, then we get this really nice pastel kind of green effect on our accents and on our folders. So that is cool. I like that. So far that might be my favorite. And then you can make it orange, and I like that too. I really like the semi-transparent pastel color effect you get on the folders there. That's cool. And we got red, purple, or maybe violet, I guess, might be more accurate, and that looks great. Wow. Okay, now I'm kind of torn. That violet looks amazing to me. Oh, let's see, orange again. And violet. I'm kind of torn between these two. I think I'm going to stick with violet. And then this is our kind of automatically switches between dark and light, depending on the time of day. And then our dark here. And the dark looks really nice. I like that. And it looks even better with the violet. That is cool. Let's see how the orange looks with that. That looks even better too with the violet, or the orange and the dark theme. But I think I'm going to stick with the violet maybe. I like that. And then under other we got applications. So if you want to change your look in the applications or go to a high contrast there for your icons, you can do that there. I think I'm just going to leave it at its default though, way it is. And then if we go down to interface, we got our title bar buttons here on the right, but if you want a Mac look, you can flip it to the left there. And then you can enable animations, which is already enabled. And this is jelly mode. So if you click on that, now your window kind of wobbles. It's like the wobbly windows effect, which is really cool. And then our left super key activates the overview right now, but we can also change that to activate the menu instead if you like. Right there I just hit the Windows key or the super key. Now if I hit it, it's going to bring up the menu. So that's kind of how you can just kind of preset your super key real quick. And by default it brings up the activities overview. Personally I'd probably use it with the menu, but yeah, it's hard to say. And then icons on desktop are turned on by default, which is nice, especially for a Gnome type environment, in my opinion. Here I can check and show our home folder, our rubbish bin there, and then mounted volumes and network servers. And then we can set our size right here. We can make it super tiny or really big and anywhere in between. And this is a standard, that's the default, so that's nice. And then here we can change our fonts if we want a different kind of default font throughout the same theme, which I like. I like the defaults. And this is a really nice here. And then of course, if we go down here, we still got the same look. So yeah, change that back. So now let's come up and look at some more of our apps. Here we got a few games that's come with it, which is nice. We got Mines and Mahjong and so forth. And then come down here to graphics, we got our GIMP image viewer and LibreOffice Draw and photos. So that's our photo viewer. All our basic apps are in here by default. Then we got Firefox and we got Ramina, which is a remote desktop application. Let's see what our Firefox, our version is here. It should be the newest, I would think, like 95, 96, but let's just take a look. And it looks like the Zorin OS is our homepage. So I'm going to go up here and go to Help and About. And we are at 96. Very good. So that looks pretty cutting edge to me there. I'm glad to see that. So I'll just close Firefox for now. And we'll pop over here and take a look at our Office apps. So we got LibreOffice installed by default. Let's just open up Calc here and see what version we got running. And I notice the menu is kind of dark there with the dark theme. Doesn't really look that great, I don't think. Let's see if we can change those icons. So first I'm going to turn on our menu bar. And then let's go to, yeah, see how dark those are? So if we go through all these, they all look dark. So I'm going to go up to Tools, Options, and then let's go to View. And here we can change our icon type. And let's see if they have any dark themes for our icons. Not seeing any, but let's try maybe the Yaru and see if that helps. So I'm going to click that guy and then come down here and apply it. Yeah, that looks better. Yeah, the icon's just kind of lit right up there. So it looks like Yaru has a dark version in there by default, even though it wasn't specified. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to go with that. So I think after changing the theme, that really helps. And then we're running 7.2.3.2. So yeah, I think that's fairly recent there. That looks pretty good. Glad to see that. And then under our sound apps, we got the BREWSKI CD app and Cheese, Pitivi. Pitivi is and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's a video editor, which is pretty nice. Let's open that real quick. Just kind of see how fast it opens. Test a little snappiness here. And there's a video app. I really haven't used this that much, but it is a pretty decent video editor. I've played with it a little bit in the past. And then under our system tools, we got our additional drivers, disk, HTOP, which we installed, power statistics and settings, software center, and that's probably somewhere we ought to go. Then we got our tour and our appearance setting again, and Zorin Connect if you got an Android phone you want to connect to. But let's jump into Software Center here and take a look at it. And it looks like they're using the Gnome Software Center, which is kind of one of my favorites for the GUI type Software Center. So it is looking good, and they recently got a makeover actually, the Gnome software. Let's click on graphics here, and it might take a second here for these to populate. Because it is the first time we're running it. Well, clicking on it seemed to help. Or that was coincidence. But let's install something. Let's see what they got here. I see they got two blenders here. And I think by default, snaps and flatpaks are installed already. So one of these might be a flatpak. That's version 2.82, which is an older version. And that's coming from the Ubuntu Focal universe. So let's click on this one and see what we got here. Alright, that's 3. Okay, so that is a cutting edge, and that's coming from FlatHub. So that's a flat pack there. So you have your choice. You can install an older one or do a flat pack, which I'm going to install right now, and just see if it goes in. We'll see how it looks. So we can launch that right from here actually, instead of going in the menu now that it's installed. And so when Blender opens, we should have an intro screen like this. And this is a first time thing here that shows up where you can change your default settings if you like. And then we can choose from general templates here. And I'm just going to go with general. And then here we got our 3D square, so we can do some 3D modeling if we want. We know that works, and I'm not going to save that. It took a little bit to open up there, a little longer than I thought. Actually, it's not closing either. Let's try that again. And let's hit don't save. Okay, that time it closed. So yeah, a little bit of sluggishness in there, and that might very well just be because of the VM I'm running rather than being on real hardware. Hard to say on that. Let's go in our menu and go to utilities and see what we got in here. So here we got our archive manager, backups, calculator, disks, and document scanner. That's all good stuff, especially if you have an all-in-one like I do. Document scanner is handy. Here's our system monitor, and this is nice to look at your processes, and here we can kind of keep track of our resources and monitor them in real time. And then we got our file systems. And then let's take a look at our system settings. So if we jump in here, it starts out with network, and then from there we got our backgrounds, and it looks like there's some nice choices here for background. I'm kind of liking those. So if we go over here, let's see what that one, yeah, that's pretty nice. I like that. That could be a keeper. Not too cluttered, has a nice look, very earthy, and there's a nice one too, and I'm liking that. Great colors in there. That's very serene. And there's a cool cityscape. Wow. Then we got some palm trees to look at. That's a pretty nice scene in the middle of January. And then there's looks like out in the maybe Badlands of Utah or somewhere. And then there's some ocean there. It kind of feels like I'm in the water. And then there's some water close-up, it looks like. Kind of cool too. This looks kind of neat. Let's check this one out. Wow, I like that. That could be my choice right there. Beautiful color. Got a nice contrast between light to dark. And I don't even mind the dark shaded area into the taskbar actually. And this looks good too though. Man, I'm torn. This is kind of a toss-up. I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards the lighthouse scene though. So I'm going to go with that, I think. Yeah, that's cool. I like it. So let's move on here. These are our notification settings. You can turn on Do Not Disturb if you don't like it. And then we got our search and our drivers here. And then beyond that, we got our privacy settings, which can be handy. And they're off by default, which is nice, some of these services. And then our file history and trash, we can adjust them here if you don't want history showing up. And then our screen lock settings, it's 5 minutes by default, but typically I set it to never because to me it's just kind of a pain when it locks. But it all depends on your situation and your environment. And so then we have our online accounts. So if you want to sync up with any of these accounts that you might have or more, you can do that there. And then here's where we kind of set our sharing settings. And this is important if you want to be able to RDP into your machine. You can go back here, we looked at this earlier, the Remina, and let's open that up real quick. This is our RDP, our remote desktop protocol that we can use here. And so if you want to be able to log into your computer remotely, this is the area here where you would want to enable your screen sharing and so forth. And then that will get you on the right track to getting in. So yeah, just kind of wanted to connect the dots for you there between this setting and the Remina that's installed. And then here we got our sound. So these are our sound settings. So if you're like me and you're doing recording, it's kind of nice to be able to have a lot of control over this area. And then here we have our default alert sounds. To me, alert sounds are kind of annoying, but that's where you can change them. And then we got our power savings. And then our display settings, which right now is at 1920 by 1080. Here we can also enable fractional scaling if you want to scale in between 1 and 2% rather than just going from 1 to 200 I mean. And then we got our mouse touchpad settings. And by default it's left, of course, but if you're a lefty and you want to change it, you can make your primary button right. And then natural scrolling, which is kind of cool too. Kind of smoothens it out a bit, I guess. I don't know, it's hard to tell. Then here's our keyboard shortcuts. So if you want to change your keyboard shortcuts on any apps or add them in, that's the place to do it right here. Nice. And here we got our printer settings, which is pretty automatic. Just click add a printer and it should detect most printers. And then we got our removable media settings and our color settings, regional settings, accessibility, so you can kind of, if you have some special needs regarding seeing and hearing, that's helpful. And then here's our user settings. So up here I can click on Toadweight and I can change my picture. Let's see, let's go with maybe the hummingbird this time. That kind of looks cool. I'm in a hummingbird mood. And then we have, oh wait a minute. Let's just jump back up here. I forgot to mention up here the unlock to change settings. That's what you want to click if you want to change like your username or something like that. And that's what that's for. So back here in our date and time, we got our 24-hour by default here, which is nice. That's what I like. And then we can go into About and see our memory usage, processor, graphics, disk capacity, and all that. A lot of what we saw when we did the Neofetch there. So this is kind of just a quick overview of our system in the About area. So nice, and we're in the X11. By the way, speaking of X11, I'm just going to jump up here real quick because I want to log out, because this kind of reminds me of something. If we log out here, and I click on my username, if we go down in the lower right corner, you have this little settings wheel, and you can select between the Zorin default and the Zorin desktop on Wayland. So if you want to use Wayland, that's where you would go and change your session, is at the login screen. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. That kind of triggered my memory there, that X11 in the About for our session. Nice. And then this is our workspaces, and then I'm just going to look at our file manager and see what's in here. it is files. So we're using Gnome files. I kind of suspected that's what it was, but kind of know for sure. And let's look at our other settings here. This is where we can change our view between icon and list. And then here we got our other settings here where we can add in some stuff. Show hidden files. You can look at our preferences, and let's see what we got in here. So we got our show sidebar and allow folders to be expanded. That can be handy. If you check that and then jump out and go toggle our view here to list view, then you can see these little levers have shown up on the side of the icons. And so you can kind of expand the folders out that way instead of double clicking to go inside it. And that's kind of a nice setting. I kind of like that. And so if we uncheck that, then those little levers disappear. And so that's where it is at default. And then double click to open a folder is our default. But if you like a single click, you can select it. And then we got our column list. So I could add, like, say, type. And then that would add type into my columns here, so I could see the type of file. Or I could select any of these other ones. And so that's kind of nice that you can pick and choose there for your columns. And so now we can see that. So I'm going to toggle back to the icon view just to keep it default. And I think that probably covers all the cool stuff here in Zorin OS. So man, what am I thinking here? What am I thinking? Actually, this Zorin OS looks like the perfect OS for a lot of different people, especially if you got somebody that's new to Linux and they kind of want an intro and they're coming off of Windows or Mac, because this can be styled to lay out like a Mac as well. And so I think if you're a Mac user or a Windows user, you're going to be really comfortable in Zorin OS. And this is a beautiful transitional distro for people coming over. And I think this would also be ideal in schools, like they've made an edition available on the website, but also in a corporate environment where maybe you're an IT there and you're tired of battling Windows all the time and the spyware and all the other troubles that Windows can bring you as an administrator anyway, in a corporate environment. And so maybe this is your chance to be able to convert into a Linux type environment, become headache free, and your users won't be that traumatized because half of them probably wouldn't know the difference whether they're on Windows or Linux. So yes, this would be a wonderful transition OS in that case. And I don't want to focus too heavy on the transition thing, because I think even if you're not transitioning, it's just a great OS and desktop to use, period. Especially if you want something that's just done for you. You don't want to set anything up yourself. Maybe you're not that technically inclined, or you're not that much of a DIY. And sometimes I think we ignore the people that are kind of on that scale where they're not that much of a do-it-yourselfer, but they want to explore. They want to tinker a little bit. You know, not too much, not go crazy, not build something from scratch using scripts or what have you. They just want to have something that's different than Windows, but they don't want to go the Mac route. So this is where these kind of solutions really come in handy, and they really fit the bill. And I think they're a really important component into helping people cross over from Windows and coming into Linux, because you can reduce the number of things that's going to put people off. And there's a lot of people out there that would really be open-minded about jumping out of Windows, but you know, they're afraid of little things like even using the terminal. People can be put off really easily when they're first coming over. And sometimes that braveness to step in and play a little further and start customizing comes with confidence and time. This is the perfect distro, I think, for somebody coming over. I know there's other ones like Linux Mint and so forth, which are also wonderful for people coming over from Windows. But this is something I would super highly recommend, and it's definitely worth that double thumbs up. And so that should cover it. I hope this was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Those likes really help. And hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.